As an artist, you really do need structure. There are a lot of things around being an artist that at some point, and you get into a certain level in your career, you come to see that you can't necessarily do all that all by yourself. When I started art at the time, money was not my first point of consideration. I was just driven by passion, I was just driven by freedom, and I just wanted to see the inside of the art.
She makes art from sand and acrylic. Her work has caught the eye of the British Museum, the BBC, the New York Times, and galleries from Lagos all the way to Venice. Osaru Obaseki is a multidisciplinary visual artist and cultural entrepreneur. Welcome to the Curating Podcast.
Thank you, Wally. It's really nice to be here.
My question is really around for any, like, when you started your art practice, right? There was a moment when you decided you wanted to do this, or there was an accumulation of moments. There were things that you saw and made you start thinking, maybe I should go into this. So I was hoping that you can talk about that, like at what point or what are things that pushed you into deciding that you wanted to specialize in arts, be a visual artist full time.
Yeah, so I like the phrasing you use, accumulation of moments, because it was indeed like at different points of my life that I started slowly doing some sort of moonwalking into art. I think the first contact with art was in secondary school, in the fine arts class, of course, and finding out that I had the pure talent of knowing how to draw. Then fast forward to after university, during my NYSC days in Nasarawa, I picked up art again. At that time, it was more of making of stuff like handmade cards and exploring fluid paintings at the time. And then again, I dropped art and fast forward to when I started working in Port Harcourt, also trying to combine art while working the 9 to 5. And I saw that this is something, in as much as there has been several courses, but this is something I'm quite really interested in and I love doing. So I think in 2017 was the year I just took the bold step to go into art full time. Yeah.
That's interesting. Quick follow-up question there. How much fear did you have making that decision? Like, were you afraid, or was this just like, I don't care, whatever happens? Like,
for me, there wasn't fear. It was actually a sense of relief, actually, other than fear. Because I remember when I left the company I was working at, and I think I went back there for, I think, my last month's salary before I finally leave. And I remember one of the senior executive staffs called me into the pantry and she was like, "Oh, I know that you've lost this right now, but don't worry, you get something better." And I'm like, if this lady knew that this was actually something I really did want. And yeah, I don't think there was any sense of fear. It was just a sense of relief and knowing that I was going into something that was going to bring me satisfaction. And yeah, I think, yes, it wasn't fear. It was a sense of relief, actually.
so you've been described as self-taught, right? How do you think about the difference between formal training and the kind of education you got through mentorship, I imagine, and like just being close to practicing artists? Because I imagine that's also where some of your lessons came from. And if you could do it again, would you choose formal training?
So I think the phrase self-taught it has always been debated, because now I'm getting to understand that whether we like it or not, even if you started things out without any educational formal training, whether we like it or not, we're being influenced and informed by certain information, and like you just mentioned now, also being sort of trained by mentors as well. So I don't think the self-taught serves that purpose anymore, because even the littlest thing, like even YouTube videos and learning from YouTube videos, that's somebody impacting their knowledge as well. So yeah, but to answer your question, if I would go through the same route again, opposed to like having studied art in school, I think yes. I think yes, because personally, I feel like it has given me more freedom to be more expressive. But in as much as I've had that initial background, starting off as a self-taught artist who has gone through mentorship and who has gone through being inspired by people in the field, and also information I've gotten from maybe books or even online, I am currently leaning towards probably going back to, sort of do a course in the arts at the moment. So, but starting over from the beginning of when I started art, I think, yeah, I'll start off by being somewhatly a self-taught artist. Yeah, because I think it gave me more freedom to be more expressive and not being restricted by certain rules and, boundaries of the theories of art. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious. I know you've talked about this in other interviews and in other places, but like, what are some of the resources how did you go about it at the point where you decided that I needed resources to help me become the kind of artist that I wanted to do? Like, what was your go-to? And how did you arrive at that go-to? Was it based on what other artists were saying? Did you just go online and research? Like, how did you arrive at your key resources? That's kind of my question.
Okay, so when I first started, I already knew that I needed community. And when I was in Port Harcourt at the time, I tried being part of a community, but I was told that if you didn't have like a formal educational background in arts, I couldn't be part of that community. But that didn't discourage me per se. So I just went ahead to like do my researches, Google stuff, what type of materials I could start exploring, finding out where there were like art shops in Port Harcourt to go get materials. And I started getting materials. I started going on YouTube to look for videos for beginners or artists who are beginners, and that's how I started exploring fluid art. But still, I knew that I needed community, and I knew that I needed people who had already walked the road of being an artist, because I was coming from a space of like literally no knowledge. In as much as I have researched about art or the materials or things I needed to do to create art or the kind of art I needed to create, I was still quite unaware of what the art scene was like and how to navigate it. I wasn't aware that there was an art scene. It was that bad. So I told myself where better to go than, of course, where I'm from, which is the city of Benin, which is the home of art, that dates back, of course. So I found myself in Benin, and I bumped into a studio, Nosona Studios at the time, and I got mentorship. I found myself around artists who were also practicing, and all of this, and also the Benin environment also just influenced how my practice grew. Yeah.
What you just said now kind of validates how much passion or interest you have in arts, right? Because like, if you didn't know there was an art scene, but you just knew that you wanted to do art, and then you took all the steps to like get into it without necessarily even knowing enough about the art scene or what it took and what will help you break into that scene. I think that's interesting. Yeah, I wanted to ask about the lost wax technique of bronze casting. I've learned that it's not traditionally practiced by women in Benin. I mean, Benin is popular for it, but it's not practiced by women in Benin. The only other recorded woman that I found was Princess Elizabeth Olowu, the daughter of Oba Kenzo Atu. So what was it like entering that space as a woman? Like how did you decide that this is what I wanted? Like I wanted to practice this technique, I wanted to learn it. What did that look like?
So you're very correct. It's not traditionally accepted for women to actually be bronze casters. So I want to say there's a difference between an artist or a contemporary artist creating work in bronze as a medium and an artist being a bronze caster. I think they are two different things, because even the whole practice of bronze casting, when you even go to places like Egun Street where they do it traditionally, I think it's a division of labor thing, because when you visit a foundry, you don't find one person who does the process from modeling down to the casting stage. So they have like a community of people who, you have somebody assigned to like the modeling aspect of it, you have somebody assigned to the waxing aspect of it, you have somebody else who his job is to do the filing, the cutting of the wood, the burning of the mold, down to the pouring. So it's a division of labor thing. So let me put that out there. Then the whole notion about women not casting bronze, I think it has its traditional reasons why they didn't or they don't allow women to cast bronze. There are spiritual reasons, there are even health-wise reasons, because women are seen as a fertile ground to bring forth children to the world. So they don't necessarily see it as a conducive environment for women who are meant to like conceive, because of the smoke and even the fumes that come from burning of the brass itself. And yes, you're also correct that Elizabeth Olowu was the first woman to produce work in bronze, but she didn't necessarily cast the works in bronze. So since she was a princess, and of course her father gave her the go-ahead to create works in bronze, but she didn't outrightly cast the works herself, but she did create her designs, her modeling, and they had the people who were into bronze casting come cast the bronze for her, which is almost same as me, because I go through the process of creating my modeling, doing making the mold, even down to paint waxing, and just making the work down to the stage of it being fired and casted. Then I take it to the professionals who do this. For instance, I'll give an instance. So when I was in Murano for my residency in Venice, when I started exploring glass, they usually call the people who make the glass sculptures, they call them glass maestros. So I can as well call the people who cast bronze in Benin maybe the bronze casting maestros. So when it gets to that point, we take it to the maestros for them to do their thing. So that's what I know about that.
You started your professional practice in 2017, right? Like just looking broadly now, what are the things that you say have changed for artists between then and now? Like 2017 is not so long ago, but it's 9 years ago. Like I was just thinking about it, and 9 years is a long time.
Oh wow, 9 years.
Would you say things have changed in terms of? Yeah, it is 9 years. So you're going on a decade being a professional artist full time. But yeah, what would you say has changed in terms of infrastructure, access, and even maybe international visibility? Like, are there things that have changed between that time? 9 years is a long time. It's also a very short time, right? So I wanted to get your perspective.
Yeah, 9 years is a long time, and the way I see my trajectory, I literally just see it as a journey. So I'm not necessarily putting timestamps in places I want to see myself, even if it's what a lot of people do. You know, you need to draw up your goals, your visions, where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 10 years. But personally, the way I live life, I live life very simply. And in terms of now looking at my journey, I would say a lot has changed, even in terms of my practice and even in terms of the kind of work I produce. And that just goes to say that people evolve and people's ideology changes over time or gets more grounded, so to say. So if I am taking some sort of introspection right now, I would see my art and say that, of course, it has grown over the years from someone who explored fluid accidental art to somebody who started exploring forms and going into things like pre and post-colonial narratives and how to juxtapose those histories against modern day realities, and even talking about identity. So I would say I've grown over time in terms of my work and my practice. And even in places I now see myself exhibit in or collaborate with, I think it speaks of growth. So I think it's somewhat like a boomerang effect, because the more you put yourself out there, the more people see what you do, the more refer you to other like projects to get involved with, and that is what has informed most of my international collaborations and even some of the international residencies I have had over the years. There are a lot of things that are now in place, or maybe they were even in place at the time when I started, but as you already know, probably I had no knowledge of them. But over the years, I have come to like experience like the whole art ecosystem more to understand things better. And in terms of opportunities, I would say artists are one people that get a lot of opportunities, because there's always this residency opening, or there's always this call for artists for exhibitions, or there's always a grant or funding for projects. So the opportunities are always out there, and you can always see them through different social media platforms or through within your network. And that's another thing. The community has grown largely, and if you find yourself in these different communities and around the art scene where you find yourself in, whether you're in Lagos or whether you're in Benin or wherever you find yourself, there's always, I'll call it an art gathering. So there's always a community that you should just probably key into so that you get information as well. And another thing I would say that has changed is also the fact that I now know that as an artist is that you really do need structure. So because art is something that you create from self and from you, so you do see yourself like as the brand, because the art comes from you. So sometimes we'll overlook the structural aspect of things and we'll say, isn't that just being an artist, creating the work, collaborating with? But there are also different moving factors around just being an artist. There's also the administrative part, there's also the digital footprint part. So there are a lot of things around being an artist that at some point and you get into a certain level in your career, you come to see that you can't necessarily do all that all by yourself. So this is where structure comes in. This is where you need a team to work with. And yeah, I think with that, it makes it easier for you to just navigate through your practice and career as an artist.
It brings me to actually the other thing that I was wondering about, which is as an artist, right? Do you think that today an emerging artist, like arts, visual arts specifically, is a sustainable source of income for an emerging artist? Specifically Nigerian or Lagos artists as a case study, Nigerian artists basically. And maybe if you can relate some of your experience there, that might be helpful.
I think this is an often asked question. And it's also a bit funny because, okay, I'll use myself as an example, because when I started art at the time, money was not my first point of consideration. I was just like driven by passion. I was just driven by freedom, and I just wanted to see the inside of the art. So I remember when I was going to the studio in Benin, I was going there for straight 1 year. Like, I literally detached myself from everything else and said, this is what I want. And I just wanted to use art to be as a platform where I had a voice to sort of put out my opinions and things I thought about the world and my environment. And that was literally my first point of contact in going into art. So I think, to answer the question now, I think over time it becomes a sustainable source of income if you are able to navigate through your growth properly. Because of course we know that there are a lot of famous artists who are doing well, selling for millions of dollars, and we also know that there are a lot of artists who have also been through the same journey, probably same timeline, and are not necessarily doing as well. So you need to understand the market you are going into. You need to understand the ecosystem of art and try as much as possible to navigate through it wisely. Yeah, but I would say from experience, yes, it is a sustainable source of income. Yeah, but it's not usually the first thought that comes to mind while being an artist. For me, anyways. I don't know about other artists.
No, I get that. And I think that's the
because sorry to cut you short. Yeah, sorry to cut you short, because I don't see going into art as, for instance, now we find ourselves in Nigeria and everybody is looking for the best way or best route to make money. And I can say, oh, because I want to make money, I want to go into probably sales of mobile phones because it's a moving market. So I want to do this business because I want to make X amount of money. So I don't necessarily see art that way, because art is different. In as much as is sellable, it's also something that is also priceless. Like, there are so many artists who are out there who are not necessarily concerned with whether they sell their art or not, and they still produce work because it comes from the inside. So I don't necessarily see art as a commodity in that sense, that money should be like the first point of contact. But over time, when you are true to your passions and true to yourself as an artist, money always comes along. That's the best. Yeah, that's the best way I can put that at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to create art that is true to self when your money is the first thing on your mind, right? Like, because you're always thinking commercial, you're trying to like appeal to the market. It doesn't. It won't really work. At least I don't see it working. So I get what
And
you're saying.
exactly
Maybe
what you just said. Yeah, what you just said, I think is also important for the artist to also make up their mind on what kind of artist they want to be. Just like you mentioned now, a lot of art is also commercial. So the same way we have commercial artists, we also have prolific artists. We have more prolific artists who are more institutionally based, like they collaborate with institutions. But commercial artists, of course, they create works in large volumes and you can easily purchase their work. They sell in volumes, but the value for sale, I don't know. I don't want to go into things I don't have factual information about. But yeah, I think it's important for artists to make that decision on what kind of artist they want to be. If you just want to create art for art's sake, for aesthetic sake, and sell that and be commercial, or if you want your art to be art for a purpose, art for preservation, art for telling a story, art for preserving culture, just like I do, but art for something, not just art for art's sake, right? And if you want to, so you just have to make that decision as an artist on what kind of artist you want to be.
What would you say are some of the best decisions you've made on your journey as an artist? I mean, what are some of the things that you'd say have impacted your success and you'd say that's a great decision I made?
Aisha have made a lot of good choices. I don't know about that,
Okay,
but
let's talk about the bad choices.
yeah. I don't want to talk about bad or good choices, but what I would say is the things that gives me some sort of fulfillment while being an artist is the fact that I'm able to get to know. I think art gave me the space to even know myself better, because I would say at the time before I even started practicing art full time, I was still finding self. So when I got into art, I think I started understanding self. And in understanding self, you have to understand roots. So that's why you see a lot of my work is deeply rooted in the Benin culture and also rooted in self experiences. I don't think I've gone too personal with my works yet, but I think I'm heading there. But I like the fact that I'm being true to myself and I'm creating work that I want to create. I'm not creating work for the market. I'm not creating work because this is what is selling at the moment. I'm not creating work because this is what they want me to create. So I think that gives me fulfillment. And in a way that probably stands me out. I'm not in the best place to say that, but probably. I think that's a decision I'm happy with, to be able to stay true to the things I want to create, regardless of if the money is coming or not at the time.
My last question is on your top resources. So what are like books, podcasts, content, websites, newsletters? What are some things that you specifically hold dear to you and you think that any Nigerian artist or Nigerian artists should specifically follow or read or consume?
So for me, I'm going to give you a very unprofessional, unconventional answer in that regard. So I'm not going to come to you and say, oh, go read this book in the art of being a master artist or creating masterpieces or this book or that book. I think I am guided and draw inspiration by things around me. So in as much as I read books, the books might come up surprisingly not necessarily related to art, because I'm a lover of Dan Brown's books. I know it's a fictional book, but for me, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes they call books fictional and they're not necessarily fictional. So I love mystery books. I love
some real stuff.
Yeah, so I love mystery books. I love investigative kind of books, like all them James Hadley Chase kind of books. I recently started reading Chimamanda as well, so I got an entire collection of her book, which I haven't gotten anywhere yet, but I have the books and I'm reading one at a time slowly. So I just generally love books that give me more insight about life and about the world. So, because I think for me as an artist, I think the artist is somebody's mind whose mind is very wide and diverse. And for your mind to be able to be diverse, you need to consume even knowledge that is not necessarily about art. Just trying to understand how the world works, just trying to understand how the world began, trying to understand cultures, trying to understand places, even trying to understand economics. So just different touch of different subjects is what I'm interested in. And sometimes it goes beyond books. Sometimes it can be me just scrolling through Instagram and I see something that is quite inspiring, or I see a quote that is posted and that just switches on something in me. Or it could be me on YouTube, or it could be me at home, because I think one of the biggest places that inspires my work is Benin. So it could be me just taking a break and saying, oh, I'm going to Benin to get inspired. And whether I like it or not, I come back inspired, right? And there are also people I admire their work. I don't know, at this point I would sound like a broken record because I always mention her whenever I'm being asked. I really love the works of Peju Alatise because she's someone I think in her practice is quite diverse. Like, you know how people say, "Oh, you're an artist. You're not just painting. You're sculpting. You're doing installations. You're just being an experimentalist in general." And they're like, "Oh, don't you think you should focus on just your painting first? Let people know you for your painting before delving." But I personally am not structured that way because my mind easily runs wild. Just as I'm creating a painting, I'm asking myself, "Oh, can't I make this work in this material?" So I'm really drawn to materials, and I'm really drawn to experimenting with different materials, and I see that in her and her work as well. So I'm really big time inspired by her. I remember seeing her exhibition in 2018. I think that's the exhibition that literally just blew my mind. The one she had at the Kia showroom, and you have these installations of the black bodies and their wings and butterflies. And there was this one that really spoke to me, the one of a table and two sculptures at the two ends. I think one was lying and she had this paint. So it's just mind blowing to see how wild an artist's mind can run. So that's one person that inspires me a lot in terms of how diverse an artist is and is allowed to be.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Osaru. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Okay, thank you too for having me.